Okay, welcome back everyone to our final guest speaker session of the day. In today's last presentation session, we are going to hear from Karina Zew from Bridge. Karina is coming to us today from Argentina and works as a tutor for Bridge's online TEFL and TESOL courses and as an ESL instructor for Bridge English in Latin America. With over 30 years in the education sector, Karina has taught business English classes in international companies and general English to young learners. This is going to be a great session, and we're so pleased that you could be with us today. So thank you, Karina. And I'm going to pass the stage over to you.
Okay, thank you very much, Lise. Great to be here. Thank you for inviting me, and I hope we have a lot of fun together. I've got some very interesting things to share with you. So I'm going to start by sharing my screen, and there it is. So this is me. I am the academic trainer at Bridge English in Chile. This means that I help select teachers that come to work for us, and I also work with them to help them become better teachers with us. And I also tutor Bridge TEFL online courses. We have been working with Ellii for quite a long time, and we have TESOL and TEFL courses accredited, and we have been working in the industry for over 35 years. So let's see, next slide. There it is. So today we're going to be talking about 21st century skills, as you can see here. But before going on to 21st century skills, I would like to go back in time. I'd like to start with 20th century skills. Yeah. My grandfather, he was a carpenter. He created furniture with his bare hands back in 1920. His tools were a hammer and handsaw. And soon enough, he began to replace those tools and started using a nail gun and a table saw. So what I'm saying with this is technology becoming outdated is not something new. As humans, we're constantly evolving. But the internet, the global market, the fast pace of the modern world, it makes these changes happen a bit faster than they might have in the past century. So nowadays, we experience changes in a flash. Like by the time somebody finishes school, their knowledge is already outdated. Jobs change, job requirements change, and we need to keep up with those changes. We can't really anticipate what might happen. All we know is what will not happen. The world as we know it, basically. So a few years ago, students finished school, went to college, got a degree, found a job. It's like a production line, workstation 1, 2, 3, final product, you're out. And this is mainly because the educational system has been designed following the requirements set during the Industrial Revolution and the Enlightenment era. Countries invest in education because they hope this leads to long-term economic well-being. So the skills and competencies that schools develop depend on these expectations. They're driven by the economy of the time. Intelligence means deductive reasoning. Academic means smart. We're trained to be good workers and follow instructions. But that academic definition of intelligence follows the interests of the educational system. In school, there's a book. You follow the book, you complete the exercises. And of course, the answers are at the back of the book, and only one answer is possible. Can we look at the answers? No, of course not. That's cheating. Now, this is funny because when we exchange information outside of school, we exchange information, we review what colleagues say. This is actually the definition of collaboration. Wilson Minzer said that if you copy from one author, it's plagiarism, but if you copy from many, it's research. So the world has changed. That's a fact. The imperatives in the world of work have changed. And what about education? Industrialization conditions require creativity to be quite underestimated. In a production line, you should not be creative, only repetitive. So education aims at preparing students for this professional world. The problem is that following this utilitarian view of scholarization, and because the needs of the past century were aligned with that educational module, we're saying this no longer applies to this century because the professional world has changed. So divergent thinking, lateral thinking, creativity, started to become valuable skills that need to be developed. An idea of how to develop creativity is to show common everyday object and come up with as many different uses as we can think of. For example, let's try a quick exercise. Let's say a pen. How many uses can you think of for a pen? You can write in the chat box and surprise me. For example, you could use it to write. Yeah, of course. A hair bun. How many people have used a pen as a hair bun, right? What other things? Straight edge. Yeah, good. Good. To stir my coffee. Yeah, I've done that. It's disgusting, but yeah, that's a good one. Yes, of course. So, in fact, if we focus a bit on creativity and education, Larry Vince says that creativity is not something we learn, but actually something we unlearn. So kids start school and they're forced to fit in through peer pressure. And the idea of that regurgitation leads to knowledge, So then we start narrowing things down. We become specialists. We get like a master's and then a PhD. So as we get older, instead of collecting new ideas and experiences, we go through a strict process of elimination. George Land, I want to show you a research that they did. So George Land in 1968, he did this research that tested 1,600 5-year-olds' creativity. Now, if you look at this, 98% of the kids scored quite high, but those same children were tested 10 years later, they got 12%. So what drives this need is effectiveness, as we mentioned. But with more tools, the concept of effectiveness started to shift. Before computers appeared, workers performed simple manual tasks, but these tasks were repetitive. So we needed to discover better and more effective ways to do things. So soon enough, computers started taking over routines and repetitive tasks, and many jobs began to disappear. So The Guardian posted a list of jobs over here that are in danger of disappearing because they can be replaced by robots. So if you look closely, tasks that require problem solving or complex communication and social skills, these cannot be performed by computers. Collaboration, adaptability, these started to become valuable skills because people who possess these skills are more difficult to replace. Even more so if these people have the ability to adapt and acquire new skills on their own. So the thing is that jobs won't disappear entirely. They'll be redefined. But when we redefine these jobs, people will likely lack this new skill set required for the new roles and be out of work anyway. So jobs that involve genuine creativity, such as being an artist, being a scientist, developing a new business strategy, these can't be replaced by computers. Neither can occupations that involve building complex relationships with people, or those that deal with highly unpredictable events, like teaching English, right? Let's face it, there's tons of apps, but none can replace us yet. So when thinking of the skills that need to be taught to deal with this rapidly changing world, we need to teach emotional intelligence, resilience, adaptability. It's a fact that jobs become outdated, and we will need to reinvent ourselves several times in our lives. My grandfather reinvented himself once. I've reinvented myself like 3 or 4 times already. So if this trend continues, imagine how many times our children or grandchildren will need to reinvent themselves per day. So in general, knowledge, information, and ability are concepts that are taken for granted, and these concepts need to be reviewed. So let's begin with the definition of these 21st century skills. These skills refer to the knowledge, life skills, career habits, and traits that are critically important to student success in today's world, particularly as students move on to college, the workforce, and adult life. So, as we mentioned, the mere repetition of facts is not that useful. Computers can do that. Google can do that. Like how many times we've been on video conferences and like on the side checked on Google to like throw in there's an interesting fact to add to our speech, for example. So today we're going to go over 5 of these important 21st century skills, describe each of them, and mention some ideas to use in class to help our students develop those skills. So the first one, communication. According to the theory of communication, this relates to the process by which people exchange information, feelings, and meaning through verbal and nonverbal messages. So not only what is actually said, the language used, but also how it is used and how it is said. And this is set through the tone of voice, our facial expressions, gestures, body language. So when two people are together in a shared space, there is communication, whether they're talking or not. And if they're talking, there's a lot more involved in that communication besides the message itself. So let's look at these components of communication, some of the components. So the first one, the term communicator, it refers to both the sender of the information as well as the receiver. In interpersonal communication, there are at least two communicators involved in the conversation. The message, it's one of the most important parts of the interpersonal communication, and it can be conveyed in many ways. Speech, of course, body language, tone of voice, gestures, etc. Then we have noise. Noise refers to the difference between the message that is sent and the one that is received. This is one of the biggest barriers to effective communication. It could be due to inattention, language barriers, cultural differences, and it acts as a distortion, creating inconsistencies. Then we have feedback. That is the response of the receiver. In other words, it's the message sent back to the sender. And it's important because it allows the sender to know whether the message has been received and interpreted correctly. But this depends mostly on context, on the environmental factors that influence the outcomes of communication, such as the time and place, family relationships, gender, cultural, personal interests, and so much more. And finally, the last element refers to how this communication occurs. A message is sent and received through a specific channel or medium. This could be face-to-face, social media, email, SMS, telephone. They're all examples of communication channels. And as the communication ecosystem in the workplace is becoming extremely complex and communication channels such as emails are becoming more and more inefficient, companies are now looking for ways to consolidate all those channels into one single communication platform, for example. Okay, so back to the elements of communication. We mentioned that one of them is a tone of voice, and here's where I would like to tie in with some classroom activities. This is an activity we could share, we could use with our students. Could be used for beginners, advanced, any level you wish. It's engaging, it's fun, and it helps students develop nonverbal meaning in a foreign language, which you might think, well, this could be a surprise because it's nonverbal. There shouldn't be a problem, right? But a lot of the tone and intonation of the language does not translate equally across languages. So it is a very good activity to work. So here what you can see is just a conversation with different hey. Now, I'm going to read these, and I'm going to read it with a different pitch, tone of voice, and everything. And I want you to listen to my tone of voice, my pitch, intonation, everything, and try to guess the meaning. Okay, try to guess what it is I'm saying with this. So let's start. And try to think about it. Hey, 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 hey. Okay, so what are some of your guesses? Any ideas? Any comments in the chat box? Well, there were many, not just consternation and surprise, but let's see. And the order that I said it was like this. Hey, changing the subject. Hey, not interested. Hey, gossip. Hey, showing surprise. Hey, confirming information. Hey, showing interest. Hey, started it. Hey, showing disbelief. So as you can see, there are many different tones of voice that we can use, and it has different meanings. So another thing we could do, like the same type of activity, but done a different way. Instead of this time us reading and them guessing the scenario, we can give them the scenario. For example, this conversation involves just saying hi, but it's two colleagues, okay? They're coworkers, they see each other every day at work, their desks are one next to each other, and this takes place every morning, this morning in the elevator. So have them read this. It's gonna be something like, hi, right? So we could do this again, but this time changing the scenario. Okay, so now they're close friends who haven't seen each other in a long time. They're not in an elevator, they're at a party. So they're probably going to be like, hi, hi. Okay, it's going to be like completely different intonation. And so here's the difference. And here's how we deal with intonation, with pitch. Pitch contours are very like underestimated, actually. So another scenario, just the please call her, with 3 different situations. First, you're the boss asking somebody to call the managing director. So that's going to be like a formal environment. So formality could be conveyed not only with the correct words, but also with correct tone. Please call her. Or you're the dad. Please call her. Like, please call her. Come on, now. Stop texting. So, and then another one, customer service, you really want to be nice because somebody's complaining. So please call her. And as we mentioned, nonverbal communication conveys meaning. And if it conveys meaning, it could also lead to misunderstanding. And the main concept here that we need to remember is that intonation is not the same across languages. So, but a new channel, we were speaking of channels, a new channel is texting. And sometimes with texting, we don't have body language, intonation, and everything. So what do we have with texting? Emojis. So here's a way that we could be not being rude, but also kind of like insulting at the same time. All right, so that's enough of communication. Let's move on to our second skill. Let's talk about collaboration a little bit. So individualism leads to heroes. One person single-handedly defeating the dangers of the universe, coming to our rescue, and making us believe we actually need to be rescued, right? We are hardwired to believe this is possible, over-glorifying leaders who exude charisma, bold personality, arrogant. In other words, narcissistic. But again, before talking about century 21, I would like to go back to the beginning of the 20th century. No, I'm not going to talk about Grandpa again, although he was Russian too. Who I want to talk about this time is Vygotsky. He was a Russian constructivist psychologist from the early 1900s. His theory is still applied today. He stated that children have 3 basic areas: what they have learned, what they cannot learn yet, and what they can potentially learn. He called this area of potential learning the zone of proximal development. And he observed that the learning occurs best when there's someone else helping, especially if it's a more competent peer. So this led to the importance of collaborative learning. But back to ZPD, if something's too difficult or too frustrating, obtaining help can increase their skills. So Jerome Bruner in the 1960s used this term scaffolding, and it connected it to Vygotsky's ZPD to define this help and support that students receive while learning something new. Just like with buildings, as teachers, we provide help and at a certain moment, withdraw it. So overhelping our students would risk turning them into passive learners, hindering their growth instead of facilitating it. Not helping at all would increase frustration and a sense of underachievement. I really like Scott Thornbury's use of the term scaffolding when he talks about language system being under construction, because it will let them attempt language tasks that they might still not be ready for and may even succeed. So what I'm saying is holding their hands through the learning process, giving them crutches is not such a bad practice. And Ibrahim here talks about dependability and a sense of companionship, not being alone, togetherness. When students are working in groups, they will be a part of a community where everyone will lend support to one another. Students need this support while learning. Ken talked about this in the previous talk. I don't know if you were here to hear Ken's presentation. He talked about this support and this cooperation. It was really interesting. They need this support. When students of different performance levels cooperate with each other, working towards achieving a desired goal, they're not merely accountable for their own learning process, but they're also responsible for their peers' learning process as well. In other words, success will breed more success. And this learning experience can be enriched even more when the teaching method which is used takes into account the interests and motivation of the learners. Students will feel more motivated with collaborative learning. And this is because the students will feel in charge and empowered in terms of their own learning process. So let me share an experience I witnessed with my own son. During the pandemic, he became friends with this group of kids. They were all doing online learning. And one of them, he participates in math Olympiads and he wins gold medals. He's really a genius. He's like one of these super genius kids. But my son wasn't, he's just a normal kid who struggled with math a lot. So this friend started regular Zoom meetings with his closest friends to help them, my son among them, to help them with the math problems nobody was understanding. Today, my son has straight A's in math, and so do all his friends. So collaborative learning, we talk about a group of 2 or more students working together to achieve a shared goal. Students interacting and sharing their knowledge to complete a task and learning together. With peer group, with working in groups, learners practice communicating in English at the same time, leaving you to monitor those students, take notes, give feedback. So collaboration involves being part of a group, and it also requires listening skills. But collaborative learning is not just working in groups. Okay? It involves negotiating meaning. So a good idea for collaborative work is to use jigsaw activities, gap activities, story building, spot the difference, communicative crosswords. They're all examples of these activities that give the learners the opportunity to develop their communicative competence through negotiation of meaning as they share information. By the way, Ellii has like wonderful debates. Debates are great activities for this kind. I'm going to stop sharing my presentation, and I'm going to share, let's see, I'm going to share a lesson of a debate from Ellii. So here it is. You can see that this lesson starts with a pre-reading activity. There's a picture, you discuss that, go over vocab. There is a reading. So it works through the material really well, allowing the students to become familiar with the topic and become familiar with the vocabulary. It makes sure that there's comprehension to understand the reading. And then there's a follow-up for vocab and a discussion and a debate. Debates are wonderful when students are ready, because the typical thing that we face when we have a debate in class is that students have great ideas to share, but lack the knowledge of vocab or structures needed to express them in a foreign language. So all this previous work that you see here is conducive to a successful debate. So I really encourage everyone to go through the material that they present because they are wonderful lesson plans. So let me go back to my presentation and share that again with you. And here it is. Okay, so another great activity for collaboration is jigsaw reading. And here, what I would like, Ashley, if you could share the 6 links that, that we have, if that's possible. Okay, give me 1 second. Can you share that and pin them on the screen, please? If not, I'll write them in the chat box. Here, what I prepared are 6 different documents. And these 6 documents have different information as examples of jigsaw readings. You're welcome to access any, oh, sorry, yeah, I saw that. You're welcome to access only one of them. You would be telling your students to go to one. You would assign one to each student, making sure that each group has 2 or 3 students. Build small groups and have them read the information and summarize that. Once they have that summary ready, then you would ask them to, so each one sees a little piece of the article. So once everybody has that summary, they would be interacting, writing down on the document, writing on top of each other. There's chaos, a little bit of chaos, which is actually good in the learning context. That's like good teacher sauce. Once they agree on that final summary, they have to close all the files, and you really need to insist that they close all the files, because then you would give them this other link, the final summary. So they would have to access and recall the information that they were working on and write it in that final summary. So this activity is quite interesting because it helps a lot with process writing. Process writing is highly collaborative. And it also has students working on comprehension, paraphrasing. You could also work on paragraph structure like topic, sentence, supporting statements, conclusion, or any other kind of language follow-up you can think of. But it's highly, highly collaborative. So I don't know if you were looking at the document 1, 2, 3, if you were able to open them and read them a little bit, because the topic of those would actually lead us to the next skill, which is leadership. So basically speaking, leadership skills involve the ability to lead. Yeah, that's not something difficult to deduct, right? But what does this mean? It means to influence, to guide people. You know, that former president, right, Eisenhower, said that leadership is the art of getting someone else to do something you want done, making them believe they want to do it. So it involves making decisions, having a clear vision, establishing achievable goals, providing the tools to reach those goals. An effective leader possesses the following characteristics: self-confidence, strong communication and management skills, creative and innovative thinking, perseverance in the face of failure, willingness to take risks, openness to change, level-headedness and reactiveness in times of crisis. So some people inherently have these characteristics. You know, some people are born true leaders, but honestly, leadership skills can also be developed. It's not something you're either born or not. You can also work for this. So first of all, over here, next slide. First of all, we need to be able to explain details. Leaders need to be able to explain, and as we learned and discussed in communication, this involves body language and active listening. Leaders also need to motivate, inspire others. And this could be done by increasing other people's self-esteem, by recognizing effort and achievement, or by giving them new responsibilities. Leaders should be able to delegate. And to be able to delegate, we need to identify other people's skills in order to split the tasks. Being positive helps develop a happy, healthy environment. By demonstrating integrity, others will feel they can approach their leader. Building trust is one of the most essential leadership skills. Leaders should be creative. Creativity is the willingness to try new solutions or to approach problems in a non-traditional way. And leaders should always be able to look for opportunities to receive or provide information about performance. They should be able to accept mistakes or failures and instead look for solutions for improvement of a situation, showing that they're responsible for their acts. A leader should strive to follow through with everything that they agreed to do, showing commitment. Finally, leaders need to be flexible and able to adapt, to accept changes and to adapt to new situations and solve problems creatively. So let's talk about some classroom ideas to develop these leadership skills in your students. Here's an idea for children or teenagers. It's not good for online classes though, but it works really well. It's called Tallest Tower. They get everyday items like toothpicks, wooden blocks, uncooked pasta, whatever. The task is to build the tallest possible freestanding structure with the materials that they get. This really encourages creative problem solving and developing collaboration skills. Another one for business English, center stage. So you get a team with 4 members, for example. One member of the team plays the role of an employee who has missed meetings or been late to work. Each of the other 3 participants should demonstrate how they would react as their boss. Make sure that you let them know that nothing is incorrect here. You can even encourage them to be mean, telling them off in a rude way or things like that, to see like different ideas of different leadership skills. So after each demonstration, the whole group can reflect on these approaches. For example, they should consider what worked, what didn't, why not, and finally have a conclusion on what their ideal leader would do in that scenario. Another idea, minefield. This is also not for online classes, but it helps build trust and communication skills. So it involves participants working in pairs, one team member blindfolded, and then using very specific communication techniques, the pair need to negotiate their way around over a minefield of obstacles. So what do I mean by negotiate their way? Well, they can use words like left, right, forwards, backwards. This really helps to work with a certain lexical set that you've been dealing with in the previous classes or things like that. So the idea is the blindfolded person should be able to go across the room without bumping into tables, desks, and anything, because their partner is telling them walk left, walk right, 3 steps forward. Another idea. This one is good for children. Teens could be also, and not for online classes. It's called magic carpet. So you give them a small rug with enough room for them to stand within its boundaries, and then tell them that the group task is that they have to work together to flip the rug over without any participants stepping off. If or when somebody steps off, they have to start all over again. Another activity, we could call this just listen. And it's good for kids and teenagers. So you agree with all your students that for one day, they cannot talk about themselves. One full day. If they're talking to somebody else, they can listen and they can talk about the person they're talking to, but they cannot talk about themselves. So this helps children focus on other people and how important it is to focus and to listen to other people. And this forms the basis of relational leadership. So it's a really good idea for class. Another task, what if? This is for business students. So you could present different hypothetical, problematical scenarios to your employees and present situations such as, well, you didn't submit your report on time, and because of this, you lost an important client. This costs a lot of money to our company. How do you justify this? And what do you think, how would you solve this, right? So, and also this activity works really, really well if you give them a very short time frame. They work alone first, 1 minute, and present a couple of ideas, and then work in pairs, like a pyramid discussion in pairs, groups of 4, full class. Another one for children. Oh, sorry, no, you don't need to fill in those documents. They're just answering Tanzida. No, they're just examples of how you could work with jigsaw readings. You don't need to fill them in, just look at them. Okay, another activity for leadership skills for kids. This one works great for kids. Give them crayons, construction paper, magazines, scissors, and have them draw themselves. And also they should cut out and paste in that poster things that represent them, things that make them unique. So this will help them improve their confidence. At the end, they present their work and show others who they really are. Another one for business, office trivia. Like this is a great icebreaker for any kind of meetings. You can have create a list of questions related to the workplace. For example, how many people named John work for the accounting department? And also this could be done as a Kahoot, which is like Very, very interesting to start off a group class in an office. Like when you're teaching business English, you have a group of new people. They don't know each other. Day one, okay, 2 questions to start off this meeting, or 3 questions, and then of course, it involves a little bit of previous research. Okay, so our next skill that I would like to discuss, innovation. So education systems, as we already discussed, were initially constructed only thinking about the cognitive brain function, the intellectual part of the brain, but the social and the emotional part of the brain, which is about character, skills, optimism, perseverance, motivation, values, fairness, ethics. This should also be a fundamental part of the educational system. So innovation skills are increasingly being recognized as the skills that separate students who are prepared for this increasingly complex life and work environments in the 21st century and those who are not. So as teachers, we need to encourage our students to use their imagination to envision better ways to accomplish tasks. By giving students real-world problems to tackle, fail, and try again, we're telling students that their voices matter. And if our class is based on discovery and inquiry, it will be so much more exciting than remembering dates, information, or taking tests. So let's review a couple of ideas to be a little bit more innovative in class. So in class, we always had introverts and extroverts. One huge difference between them is that extroverts tend to get their energy from social interaction, and introverts gain their energy from quiet spaces and a time to think and reflect alone. Therefore, when a classroom solely focuses on group work, which emphasizes whole group discussions or small groups working together, gathering peer feedback, this requires a great deal of social interaction. So extroverts in the classroom can grow and gain energy, but introverted students can find themselves easily drained with a lack of motivation to participate. Now, on the other hand, when a project focuses solely on quiet reflection with individual research, the opposite is likely to occur. Introverts can then thrive and blossom, leaving extroverts to feel antsy and lost. They can also become easily annoyed, get in trouble for trying to get attention, talking, sneaking in on social media, becoming disruptive, and being diagnosed with ADHD. So as an alternative, teachers can offer students options of working in groups or on their own. They can complete some projects alone, or they can choose to collaborate. Both of these ways of teaching are critical to meet the needs of different learners. Teachers who provide activities that best engage, inspire, and sustain students' love for learning are more likely to put in their best effort, enjoy the process, and find positive results. Another idea for innovation is to use problem finding. No, I did not make a mistake. It's problem finding, not problem solving. No. Instead of problem solving, teachers can help students look at the world by finding gaps to fill using problem finding. So problem finding requires an intellectual and imaginative vision to seek out what might be missing, what could be added to something important. So using this strategy, teachers can provide students with the opportunity to think deeply, ask critical questions, and apply creative ways to solve problems. So one more idea is to let students take risks and fail. Students need to see that adults in their lives try many things and repeatedly fail, but keep on trying. Students need to experience failure to learn that it's okay. When teachers provide real-world projects that give students problems to solve, they're offering a platform for students to learn from failure, step up again and again and again to eventually find success. Psychologist Janet Metcalf, she said that avoiding and ignoring mistakes at school is the classic rule in American classrooms. When we don't let students fail, we're most likely holding back not only individual student growth, but we're also holding back the entire education system. By giving students real-world problems to tackle, fail, and try again, we are telling students that their voices matter. We have plenty of issues worth addressing that we can give to students for an insight and opinion. So when we based our teaching on discovery and inquiry, it's so much more exciting than regurgitating verb conjugations and word lists. So predetermined answers on an exam in a traditional education setting can hold students back in ways we cannot measure. And also, let's face it, if you're teaching something new and your students score 100% of their test, not much learning has occurred. That student came to class already knowing. He knew that. But the student who struggled, failed, and tried and succeeded, that's where you can see the learning process developing. You can see it, it's clear, it's evident, it's measurable, it's tangible. And finally, we could consider a flipped classroom model. When teachers use a flipped classroom, the traditional order of teaching and classroom events are reversed. Typically, students can view lecture materials, read text, do research as their homework prior to coming to class. The time spent on class is reserved for activities. And this could include peer-to-peer learning, group discussions, independent learning, engaging in collaborative work, etc. Next, I would like to talk about digital literacy. I know I don't have much more time, but I'm going to go quickly. If you Google digital literacy, you'll find tons and tons and tons of definitions. And I'm going to choose the one from American Library Association because I like this. So to choose this is our first problem, selecting which source is important. So it's really important to see that if I'm looking at this, then it means I use my technology to search for information and my own judgment and experience and knowledge to decide which definition works best for me. A concept that we have been talking about before, I know that Ken mentioned this in his talk, is digital native and digital immigrants. Pretty much anybody that is above 40 is a digital immigrant. And why is this important? Well, if I'm using an ebook to somebody that's 50 years old, I need to teach them where to click. But if I'm teaching 20-year-olds, this could be intuitive. So to end, I would like to share a joke. That's not so much of a joke, especially if you have kids. And I thought it was really funny. So some of my references that I used for today's talk. And then I would like to say before Ellii comes back in for questions, I would like everybody to know that you have 10% off any of our Bridge TEFL courses using that promo code.
Ellii,